This is, of course, from Screen Rant. Malignant is getting a sequel? Maybe not 100% a sequel, but the film seemed to have a successful cultural relevance during its hybrid release in theaters and HBO Max, especially considering the concern towards its quality in the days leading up to the release. And let me pause with that. In the days leading up to Malignant's release, I, as a great James Wan fan, was incredibly nervous about how this was going to go. Suffice it to say, there was no review score for it. The film did not have a Friday night opening. It was dropping on HBO Max like 2 in the morning, what have you, but it did not have a Friday night opening. It did not have a review embargo that was lifted. This movie was just silence all across the way. I'm a huge fan of James Wan. I've at least enjoyed everything he's made as a director. And I've really liked or loved most of his work. But this had me incredibly nervous. So I was thinking this movie was just going to be terrible. And a lot of the early tweets that had come out from press screenings, because they can tweet even if they can't put a review out yet. All those things kind of had to do with this movie is wild, it's crazy, but that never really outlined if it was crazy good or crazy bad. And so there was a lot of stuff kind of questioning about that. Well, Annabelle Wallis, who played Madison Mitchell, the lead of the film, said, let me just read the quote here, "There's plenty of ideas swirling around. We were very flattered by the reception, and I think taken aback by the reception. So yeah, there's lots of conversations happening." And she was referring, of course, to the question of will we see a return to the Malignant series. Just to be fair, I'm going to try my best not to hit spoilers here, but if you haven't seen the film, I might tiptoe around them a little bit. It's tough for me because a lot of people talked about spoilers, but I felt like I could kind of guess where the movie was going from moment one. So Wan's films kind of have a tendency to go towards the franchise setting, so that's the plan or not. He does have a tendency to create interesting concepts that lend themselves to expansion. Of course, we talk about Saw, which now has 9 films, and he only really heavily worked on directing one, worked on writing on 2 or 3 of them, and then has produced the rest, but 9 films here. Dead Silence didn't have a sequel, Death Sentence didn't have a sequel, but it was based on the idea kernel of a sequel to Death Wish, so it's kind of like a cousin idea or a sister movie to that one. Insidious has 4 films with a 5th one on the way. He directed 2 of those. The Conjuring as an entire universe that I think, he directed 2 of them, but there's 3 Conjurings, 3 Annabelles, there's a Nun, a Curse of La Llorona. So I think is there 8? 8 right now films in the Conjuring universe? That's quite a bit for the fact that it's an 8-year-old movie. He also directed sequels and interconnected universe films with Furious 7 and Aquaman. So Malignant doesn't seem completely out of the possibility for getting a sequel. It seems entirely possible. Everything he's made has continued in some way except for Death Sentence and Dead Silence. There's almost no way to do a sequel that doesn't involve Wallis. Annabelle Wallis is very integral to the film. I'm not sure how you would make a film that doesn't include her. And again, trying to stay spoiler free here, it just doesn't, she is as important to Jason, or she's as important as a villain would be to appearing in a follow-up. Let's look at this comparison to let's say Malignant was going to become a major franchise like a Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street. What is most important to a new Friday the 13th film is Jason. What is most important to a new Nightmare film? Freddy. Most important to a new Halloween film? Michael. These bad guys, if you will, are the most important returning element to these franchises. In the case of Malignant, you almost, because of the connection between Annabelle Wallis's character Madison and our villain Gabriel, is so important that you couldn't do a sequel, at least I don't think, without having some connection there. You almost need to have that. In that case, it's a little bit closer to Chucky and Andy Barclay. It would be really tough to separate that dynamic. Or, back to Michael Myers and Halloween, Laurie Strode is very important to it, at least in the original continuity where she's related to Michael. Her and Michael need to be kind of synonymous at that point, and when you lose her there, you have to kind of scramble to figure out who do we replace Laurie Strode with. It's less of a thing in the new movies because there's really no actual like connection between the characters that's important. But Malignant 2 would need to have Annabelle Wallis and Gabriel. I don't see any reason why you wouldn't have that. She's just more entwined than that. That all being said, there's a lot more to explore in a follow-up because there's little dangling bits of development scattered throughout the film. I think about the tone itself is very interesting, and I'd like to see that happen. It's tricky from a tonal perspective if he doesn't direct it too. If James Wan doesn't return to do Malignant 2, I don't know of a director that I immediately think I could pop that guy right in there because it's just a different kind of movie. You need to have someone that has those sensibilities. And it's not like, like Saw. I mean, there was a specific way that each film kind of had to stick within that world. You could maybe have someone kind of just copy and paste, but like I look at Conjuring 3, which came out this year. That movie survives because of the central performances, not because of the direction. The directing on The Conjuring 3 was not all that great. It was fine, but it wasn't exemplary, which is what we like. You notice that James Wan's not directing the third Conjuring film, and I don't want to be thinking about Annabelle or about Malignant 2 and going, "Oh, I really wish James Wan was directing this." You would need to find someone else who could do it. I don't know if I could think of anyone. Where would you all go with a Malignant follow-up? That's, I guess, the question at the end of this year is, what would you do as a follow-up to Malignant? My thoughts, personally, just me jumping around, and again, we're going to get into some minor spoilers here, but I would take it back to the hospital. The hospital is pictured early on in the film in the opening. There's certain flashes back to the hospital as the film goes on, but I would take it to the hospital because I feel like I would take it to the hospital because if you did that, you could almost kind of take the bonkers ideas that are at play with this movie and mix and intermingle them with kind of a haunted house setting. And I don't mean that the hospital has to be haunted, but this creepy hospital that has a lot of history, that could add a lot of mythology to what's going on. Go back to the area that seems in tune, kind of meld that with maybe even like a slasher set in a hospital. Like we think about movies like X-Ray, Visiting Hours, that are set in a hospital setting. You could maybe do something like that, have a throwback to like Nightmare on Elm Street Dream Warriors or Bad Dreams. There's a lot you could do with the hospital setting, and I feel like taking our characters there for answers, for more information, could take and add something new to that. So I would swap it out and kind of just focus on like a 70s Giallo-esque. Not that Malignant is Giallo, but it's inspired by a lot of Giallo. I would say a Giallo-esque haunted house slasher film set in a hospital, and take the elements we have from the first movie and carry them over there. That's just me. What do you want to see from Malignant 2? That's what's important, right? The film did pretty well considering it had an HBO release and a theater release, so this isn't entirely surprising, but what would you do with a sequel if you were given the opportunity to? And what would you need to pique your interest in a sequel? Is it the return of James Wan? Is it the return of Annabelle Wallis? Is it the return of any other people in the movie? What do you need to see in order to make you want to check in for Malignant 2? Let me know down in the comment section below. That part's really interesting to me. So